The Alpha King rejected his Omega in front of the pack. Then she drank the poisoned wine. The Moonfire Festival had arrived, and the ancient fortress of Greyhaven stood wrapped in silver light. Torches burned along the battlements like a crown of fire against the bruised purple sky, and the great courtyard, wide enough to hold 1,000 souls and still leave room for dancing, had been transformed into something almost holy. Long tables draped in dark linen carried platters of roasted game and honeyed bread, pitchers of wine and mead, bowls of autumn fruit so ripe the air itself tasted sweet. Garlands of dried lavender and wolfsbane hung from iron sconces, swaying in the November wind that swept down from the northern mountains and carried with it the scent of pine and frozen earth. The entire Greyhaven pack had gathered, from the eldest council members who walked with carved staffs to the youngest pups who darted between legs and stole sugared almonds from the dessert trays. Warriors stood in ceremonial leathers embossed with the sigil of their house, the snarling wolf above a crescent moon, and their mates wore gowns of deep burgundy and forest green, their hair braided with threads of silver. Music floated from the far end of the courtyard where a group of bards played fiddles and drums, the melody ancient and stirring, something that pulled at the blood and made even the most stoic warrior tap a foot against the cobblestones. But tonight was not merely a celebration. Tonight was sacred. Once every generation, when the blood moon and the frost moon aligned in the sky at precisely the same hour, the Alpha of Greyhaven was bound by tradition to declare his chosen mate before the pack. It was a ritual older than the fortress itself, older than the kingdom that surrounded it, older perhaps than the language in which the vows were spoken. And so every eye, every breath, every heartbeat in that courtyard belonged to one man. Calen Thorburn stood at the top of the stone dais at the northern end of the courtyard, and the torchlight loved him. He was tall, taller than most men by a head, and built like something forged rather than born. His shoulders were broad beneath the black ceremonial cloak that fell to his boots, clasped at the throat with a brooch of hammered silver shaped like a wolf's head. His dark hair, nearly black, was pushed back from a face that could have been carved from the same granite as the fortress walls. Strong jaw, high cheekbones, a nose that had been broken once in battle and healed just slightly crooked, which somehow made him more striking rather than less. His eyes were the color of winter, pale gray with flecks of blue that seemed to shift like storm clouds depending on his mood. Right now, those eyes were unreadable. He stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his expression composed, regal, distant. He was 27 years old and had been Alpha King for 3 of those years, ever since his father, Harlan Thorburn, had fallen in the border wars against the Ashenmoor pack. In those 3 years, Calen had proven himself a ruthless strategist, a fearsome warrior, and a leader whose word was iron. He had expanded Greyhaven's territory by 40 leagues, fortified the mountain passes, negotiated trade agreements that filled his people's bellies through 2 brutal winters. He was respected, he was feared, and tonight, the pack expected him to take a mate. Standing 10 paces behind Calen, in the shadow of the great stone archway, was his beta, Finnick Graves. Where Calen was dark and brooding, Finnick was golden and sharp. He had honey-colored hair that he wore long enough to tie back, a lean face with clever hazel eyes that missed nothing, and a mouth that was almost always curved into some expression of amusement, as though the world were a private joke only he understood. He wore the same ceremonial black as his Alpha, though his cloak was shorter and bore the silver crescent of a beta rather than the full wolf. Finnick had been Calen's closest friend since boyhood, had fought beside him in every battle, had stitched his wounds and shared his fire, and told him truths no one else dared speak. He was watching Calen now with an expression that was not amusement at all, but something closer to concern, because Finnick knew something that the rest of the pack did not. He knew that Calen had already found his fated mate, the one the moon had chosen for him, the one whose scent had struck him like a blade 3 weeks ago at the autumn market, and Finnick knew that Calen intended to reject her. The reason stood to Calen's left, draped in crimson silk and wearing triumph-like perfume. Lady Lysera Blackwell was beautiful the way a winter storm is beautiful, magnificent and merciless. She had hair the color of dark wine that fell in elaborate curls over bare shoulders, skin so pale it seemed to glow, and eyes that were nearly violet, a rarity among their kind that she displayed like a weapon. She was the eldest daughter of Lord Osric Blackwell, whose family controlled the iron mines of the Eastern Ridge and commanded the loyalty of 3 vassal packs. The Blackwell alliance was the most valuable political marriage Greyhaven could secure, and Lysara had been positioning herself for this night since she was 16 years old. She stood with perfect posture, her chin tilted upward, her lips painted the exact shade of her gown, and when she glanced at the crowd below, it was with the proprietary satisfaction of someone surveying a kingdom she already considered hers. But there was someone else in that courtyard, someone standing at the back of the crowd, half hidden behind a stone pillar, her hands trembling at her sides. Maren Ashford did not belong here. She knew that. She had known it from the moment the summons had arrived at her grandmother's cottage at the edge of the Thornwood, sealed with the Alpha's mark, commanding her presence at the Moonfire Festival. She had known it when she had walked the 3 miles from the cottage to the fortress in her only good dress, a simple thing of deep blue wool, clean and mended, but unmistakably common among the silks and velvets that surrounded her now. She had known it when the guards at the gate had looked at her invitation, then looked at her, then looked at each other with expressions that said everything their mouths did not. Maren was 23 years old, and she was lovely in a way that had nothing to do with silk or jewels. She was slender but not fragile, with a natural grace in her movements that came from years of climbing forest paths and wading through streams to gather medicinal herbs. Her hair was the color of dark honey, a warm, deep gold that caught the torchlight and turned it into something luminous, and it fell past her shoulders in soft waves that she had tried and failed to pin into anything resembling a courtly style. Her face was heart-shaped, with a delicate jaw, a small, straight nose dusted with a scattering of freckles across the bridge, and a mouth that was naturally rose-pink and prone to smiling even when she was afraid, which she was, terribly, right now. But it was her eyes that made people look twice. They were a deep, clear amber, the color of honey held up to sunlight, warm and startling against her fair skin, and they held an intelligence and a gentleness that drew people to her without her ever trying. Maren was an Omega. In the hierarchy of the pack, this meant she occupied the lowest rung. Omegas were the servants, the laborers, the ones who kept their heads down and their voices soft. They were not warriors. They were not scholars. They were not consulted in matters of politics or trade. In Greyhaven, as in most packs, an Omega's value was measured in obedience and usefulness, and Maren had spent her entire life being useful. She was a healer, an herbalist trained by her grandmother, Novia Ashford, who had once been the finest healer in 3 territories before age, and grief had bent her spine and clouded her eyes. Maren knew the name and nature of every plant that grew in the Thornwood. She could brew a tincture to break a fever, a poultice to close a wound, a tea to ease the pain of childbirth. She had saved lives, many lives, and for this she was tolerated, sometimes even appreciated, though never respected. Because respect was not something Omegas received in Greyhaven. 3 weeks ago, Maren had been at the autumn market, selling sachets of dried chamomile and jars of healing salve, when a shadow had fallen over her stall. She had looked up and found herself staring into the pale gray eyes of the Alpha King. Kalen Thorburn had been walking through the market with his guard, inspecting the merchants, when something had stopped him mid-stride. A scent. He had told Finnick later that it was like being hit by lightning. One moment he was himself, and the next moment his wolf was surging forward in his chest, howling with a recognition so primal and absolute that it nearly brought him to his knees. The scent was lavender and rain and something warm beneath, something that smelled like home in a way no place ever had, and it was coming from the Omega girl behind the herb stall, who was looking up at him with those amber eyes gone wide as moons. Maren had felt it too, the bond. It crashed through her like a wave, filling every corner of her being with a certainty so overwhelming that she had to grip the edge of her stall to keep from swaying. Her wolf, the quiet, gentle thing that lived in her chest and had never once growled or snarled or demanded anything, woke up. It pressed against her ribs and whispered a single word, mine, and she had looked at the Alpha King, the most powerful man in the territory, and known with every fiber of her being that they were fated. The moon had bound them together before they were born, had woven their souls from the same thread, and no force in heaven or earth could undo what the moon had done. Except, apparently, the Alpha himself. Kalen had said nothing to her at the market. He had stared at her for one long, searing moment, and then his expression had shuddered like a window slamming closed, and he had turned and walked away. Maren had stood there, shaking, her heart hammering, waiting for him to come back. He did not come back. Days passed. A week. She tried to tell herself she had imagined it, that the bond was a mistake, that perhaps the moon had been confused. But her wolf knew better. Her wolf paced and whined and called out for him in the dark hours of the night, and Maren would lie in her narrow bed in her grandmother's cottage and press her face into the pillow and feel something inside her cracking. Then the summons had come, and here she was, standing in the back of a crowd of 1,000 people, wearing her blue wool dress and her mother's silver ring, the only piece of jewelry she owned, waiting for the Alpha King to choose a mate. Waiting and hoping and terrified of hoping, because hope was the cruelest thing an Omega could carry. The drums fell silent. The crowd stilled. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Elder Gregor, the oldest member of the Pack Council, climbed the steps of the dais with the careful deliberation of a man who had seen 80 winners. He wore robes of white trimmed with silver, and he carried in his gnarled hands a chalice, the Moon Cup, it was called, an ancient vessel carved from a single piece of moonstone that glowed faintly in the dark. The ritual was simple. The Alpha would speak the name of his chosen. The chosen would come forward. They would drink from the Moon Cup together, sealing the bond before the pack and the moon alike. It had been this way for 700 years. Alpha Kalen of House Thorburn, Elder Gregor intoned, his voice thin but carrying in the hush. Greyhaven gathers beneath the blood moon and the frost moon. The pack awaits your declaration. Name your chosen mate, and let the bond be witnessed. 1,000 people held their breath. Lysara Blackwell lifted her chin and let a small, confident smile touch her lips. Her father, Lord Osric, stood in the front row of the crowd with his arms folded across his barrel chest, looking like a man about to collect a debt. Kalen stepped forward. His boots were heavy on the stone. He looked out over his people, the warriors who had bled for him, the families who trusted him, the pups who would inherit whatever world he built. And for one moment, just one, his composure cracked. Something flickered across his face, fast as a shadow, and it looked like agony. Then it was gone. I call forward, Kalen said, and his voice was the voice of a king, deep, commanding, absolute, carrying to every corner of the courtyard without effort. Maren Ashford. The name landed like a stone dropped into still water. Ripples of shock spread through the crowd. Whispers erupted. Who? The herbalist? The Omega? Surely not. Lysara Blackwell's smile froze on her face and then shattered. Her violet eyes went wide, then narrow, then dangerous. Lord Osric's arms dropped to his sides, and his face turned the color of raw meat. And Maren felt her knees give way. She caught herself against the stone pillar, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her teeth. He called me. He called my name. The bond sang in her chest like a bell struck in a cathedral, pure and resonant and blinding. Her wolf surged with joy so fierce it was almost pain. She pressed a hand to her mouth and willed herself not to cry. Come forward, Elder Gregor said, scanning the crowd. Maren Ashford, come to the dais. The crowd parted. They parted slowly, reluctantly, turning to stare at the Omega girl in the blue wool dress as she walked through them on legs that felt like they were made of water. She could feel every eye. She could hear every whisper. She kept her gaze fixed on the dais, on the tall, dark figure standing there, and she climbed the steps with as much dignity as her trembling body could manage. She stood before him, the Alpha King, her fated mate. He was even more imposing up close. The breadth of his shoulders, the sheer physical power contained in his frame, the way his pale eyes burned in the torchlight. She looked up at him and saw something in his face that made her breath catch. It was not coldness. It was not indifference. It was grief, deep, terrible, barely controlled grief, as though he were standing at the edge of a cliff and about to step off. She did not understand. Elder Gregor lifted the Moon Cup. Alpha Kalen, do you accept the bond the moon has forged between you and this Omega? Do you claim her as your mate, your equal, your queen, before the pack and the sky? The courtyard was silent. 1,000 souls waited. Kalen looked at Maren. He looked at her amber eyes and her honey gold hair and the freckles across her nose and the way she was trying so hard to be brave. His jaw clenched. A muscle jumped in his cheek. His hands clasped behind his back were white-knuckled. No, he said. The word was quiet. It was barely more than a breath, but it detonated in the silence like a thunderclap. No. Kalen said again, louder now, as though forcing himself to commit to the destruction. I do not accept this bond. I reject it. I reject Maren Ashford as my mate, before the pack and the moon. The bond is broken. Maren stared at him. For a long suspended moment, she did not understand the words. They were sounds without meaning, syllables that did not connect to any reality she could comprehend. Then the bond, the golden, singing, glorious thread that connected her soul to his, seized in her chest like a fist closing around her heart, and she understood. She understood with a pain so absolute, so annihilating, that she could not even scream. The crowd erupted, shouts, gasps, cries of disbelief, and Alpha had not rejected a fated bond in over 200 years. It was considered an act against the moon itself, sacrilege of the highest order. Elder Gregor dropped the moon cup and it shattered on the stone, spraying moonstone fragments across the dais like broken stars. Warriors reached for weapons they were not carrying. Mothers pulled their children close. And through it all, Lysera Blackwell stood very still, and the smile that crept across her face was the smile of a woman watching a fire she had set begin to consume exactly what she intended. Maren felt her wolf collapse. It was not a metaphor. Inside her chest, the warm, gentle presence that had been her companion since childhood simply folded in on itself like a flower closing against frost. And where it had been there was only a howling emptiness that spread through her bones and made the world go gray at the edges. She swayed on the dais, her vision blurred. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out, just a small, broken exhale, like the last breath leaving a dying thing. Kalen did not look at her. He stared straight ahead, over the crowd, his face set in granite, and only Finnick, standing behind him, close enough to see the tremor in his Alpha's hands. The way his jaw was clenched so tight the tendons in his neck stood out like cords. Only Finnick knew what this was costing him. Kalen's wolf was raging. Finnick could feel it through the pack bond. A storm of fury and anguish so violent it made his own wolf flatten its ears and whine. Whatever reason Kalen had for doing this, it was not indifference. It was not cruelty. It was something else entirely. But Finnick did not know what, and that terrified him. The declaration is made, Elder Gregor whispered, and his voice shook. He looked at Maren with something that might have been pity. The bond is rejected. The Omega is released, as though she were a bird let go from a cage, as though freedom were a gift and not a sentence. Maren turned. She walked down the steps of the dais on legs that did not feel like her own. The crowd parted again, but this time with a different energy. Not curiosity but horror, not interest, but the instinctive recoil of people watching something too painful to witness. Some looked away. A few women wept. An old warrior near the front bowed his head and muttered a prayer to the moon. Maren walked through them all and did not see any of them. She walked like a woman moving through deep water, slow and numb and drowning. She made it to the edge of the courtyard, where the torchlight gave way to shadow, and the stone walls of the fortress rose like cliffs against the sky. There was a small alcove there, a recessed doorway leading to one of the servants' passages, and Maren pressed herself into it and let the darkness swallow her. She did not cry. She was beyond crying. She was beyond everything. The bond in her chest was a wound, a raw, screaming wound that pulsed with every heartbeat, and she pressed her hands against her ribs as though she could hold herself together by force. A hand touched her shoulder. She flinched violently, spinning around, and found herself looking at a girl her own age, with wild copper curls and worried brown eyes. Thessa Wren was a servant in the fortress kitchens, and she was the closest thing Maren had to a friend. They had grown up together in the Thornwood, had played in the same streams and climbed the same trees, and when Thessa had been assigned to the fortress at 14, she had made a point of sneaking herbs and provisions to Maren's grandmother whenever she could. Maren, Thessa whispered, and her voice cracked on the name. Oh, Maren, come with me. Come away from here, please. I am fine, Maren said, and the words came out flat, emptied of everything. You are not fine. You are the opposite of every fine thing that has ever existed. Come, I have a room in the servants' wing. You can rest there. You do not have to stay for the feast. The summons said I must attend the feast. The summons said you must attend the festival. The festival can eat itself. Come with me. But before Maren could answer, a sound rolled through the courtyard. The deep, resonant boom of the feast horn, calling all members of the pack to the great hall for the celebratory meal. And even as the word celebratory stuck in her throat like a bone, Maren straightened her spine and lifted her chin. She was an Omega. She had been obedient her entire life. She had been told to attend, and she would attend, because the alternative was admitting that the rejection had broken her, and she would not give them that. She would not give him that. "I will go to the feast," Maren said quietly. "I will sit and I will eat and I will smile and I will not break. Not here. Not in front of them." Thessa looked at her with an expression that was equal parts admiration and despair. "Then I will sit beside you," she said, "and if anyone so much as looks at you wrong, I will pour gravy in their lap." Despite everything, despite the wound in her chest and the emptiness where her wolf used to sing, Maren almost smiled. The great hall of Greyhaven was a cavern of stone and fire. Massive iron chandeliers hung from the vaulted ceiling, each one holding 100 candles that dripped wax like golden tears. The walls were hung with tapestries depicting the history of the pack, great hunts, legendary battles, the founding of the fortress by Tormund Thorburn 6 centuries ago. The high table stood on a raised platform at the far end, and there sat the Alpha King, flanked by Lysara Blackwell on his right and Finnick Graves on his left. Lord Osric Blackwell had claimed the seat beside his daughter, and his expression had shifted from fury to calculation, the face of a man re-evaluating his position and finding it perhaps even stronger than before. Maren sat at the far end of one of the lower tables, near the door, in the section reserved for servants and Omegas. Thessa sat beside her, small and fierce and radiating protective energy like a torch. The table was crowded, Omegas from various households, kitchen workers, stable hands, and they glanced at Maren with a mixture of sympathy and the particular discomfort of people who did not want to be associated with someone who had been publicly humiliated by the Alpha King. The food was spectacular. Course after course arrived on silver platters: venison in blackberry sauce, roasted quail stuffed with chestnuts, bread so fresh it steamed when broken open, wheels of sharp cheese, bowls of buttered parsnips and roasted turnips. Wine flowed freely, a deep red vintage from the southern vineyards that stained lips and loosened tongues. Mead, too, thick and golden and sweet, and Maren sat before her untouched plate and felt nothing. Not hunger, not thirst, not the ache in her feet from standing for hours. Only the vast, echoing emptiness in her chest where the bond had been severed, like a limb torn from her body leaving only phantom pain. She was aware distantly of Kalen at the high table. She could feel him even through the wreckage of the bond. A faint pull, a ghost of what had been, like hearing music through a wall. He was not eating either. He sat with his wine untouched and his face like carved stone, and Lysara Blackwell was leaning toward him, whispering something with her wine-dark lips close to his ear, and his expression did not change at all, not once. It was Thessa who noticed the goblet first. "Maren," she said softly, frowning, "did you order wine? There is a goblet here. It was not here before." Maren looked down. On the table before her, where a moment ago there had been only her empty wooden cup, sat a goblet of dark wine. It was a fine goblet, pewter, not wood, with a design of climbing vines etched around the rim. It did not belong at the Omega table. Someone had placed it there while Maren was staring at nothing, and she had not noticed. Perhaps someone sent it, Maren murmured. A kindness, or a mockery, she thought, but did not say. Thessa reached for it, but Maren's hand was closer. She picked up the goblet and felt the cool weight of it in her palm. The wine inside was very dark, darker than the vintage being served, almost black in the candlelight. It had a faint, sweet smell, like overripe plums and something else beneath, something sharp and botanical that Maren's trained nose should have recognized immediately. But her senses were dulled with pain, and her mind was a shattered thing, and she was so tired, so unutterably tired of being strong and dignified and unbroken, that she lifted the goblet to her lips and drank. She drank deeply. The wine was sweet and thick, and it burned going down, a warmth that spread through her chest like a bloom of fire. For one brief, beautiful moment, the emptiness receded. The pain dulled. The world softened at the edges, and Maren closed her eyes and breathed. Then the burning did not stop. It intensified. It spread from her chest outward, down her arms, into her fingers, up her throat, behind her eyes. It was not warmth anymore. It was fire. It was acid. It was something eating through her from the inside. And Maren gasped and dropped the goblet. It clattered on the table, spilling the remaining wine across the wood like a dark stain, and Thessa caught her as she swayed. "Maren? Maren!" The room tilted. The chandeliers above swam in her vision like burning stars. Maren pressed her hand to her throat and felt her pulse hammering. Too fast, too hard, erratic. Her skin was suddenly damp with sweat, and there was a taste in her mouth now, beneath the sweetness of the wine. A taste she knew. She knew it because she was a healer, because she had spent years studying plants and their properties, and the taste was bitter and sharp and unmistakable. Wolfsbane. The wine had been laced with wolfsbane, and something else. Nightshade, she thought, or perhaps hemlock, something to compound the poison and make it lethal even to a shifter's constitution. Someone had poisoned the wine. Someone had placed a poisoned goblet before her and waited for her to drink, and she had drunk it like the broken, careless, grieving fool she was. Poison, Maren whispered, and her voice came out wrong, thin, strangled, fading. Thessa, the wine. It is. She did not finish the sentence. Her body convulsed, a violent spasm that arched her spine and clenched her jaw, and then she was falling sideways off the bench, and Thessa was screaming, and the great hall of Greyhaven descended into chaos. The scream cut through the noise of the feast like a blade through silk. Every head turned. Conversations died mid-sentence. Musicians stopped playing. And Calen Thorburn, who had been enduring Lysara's whispered advances with the stoic tolerance of a man being slowly flayed, felt something inside him detonate. The bond. The broken, severed, rejected bond that he had tried to kill not 2 hours ago. It roared back to life with a vengeance that drove the air from his lungs. His wolf, which he had been holding down by force of will all evening, broke free of its cage and surged through him, and suddenly his vision sharpened to predatory focus. His hearing amplified until he could hear individual heartbeats, and every instinct he possessed converged on a single point. Maren. He was on his feet before he knew he was moving. He vaulted the high table, literally cleared it in a single bound, sending plates and goblets crashing, and crossed the great hall at a speed that was not entirely human. The crowd parted before him. He reached the Omega table and saw Maren on the stone floor, Thessa kneeling beside her, and the spilled wine spreading across the wood like a dark omen. Maren was convulsing. Her body shook with tremors she could not control, and her skin had gone from flushed to deathly pale in seconds. Her lips were turning blue. Her amber eyes were open but unfocused, rolling, and the veins beneath her skin were darkening, becoming visible like ink spreading through water. Wolfsbane did this. It attacked the blood first, corrupting it, turning it toxic. In a human, the dose she had consumed would already be fatal. In an Omega, with her slower metabolism and weaker constitution, she might have minutes, maybe an hour, maybe less. Calen dropped to his knees beside her. He gathered her into his arms, and the touch sent a shock through them both. The bond, damaged and fraying but still alive, still fighting, surged at the contact. Maren's eyes focused briefly, found his face, and he watched recognition and confusion and pain swim through those amber depths. "Kay," she whispered. It was not his name. It was not anything. It was just a sound, a broken syllable, but it struck him harder than any blow he had ever taken. Who did this? Calen's voice was not the voice of a king. It was the voice of a wolf, low, guttural, vibrating with a rage that made the nearest warriors step back. His eyes had changed. The gray was shot through with gold, his wolf pressing so close to the surface that the air around him seemed to shimmer. Who poisoned her? Silence. 1,000 people and not a single voice. Finnick was beside him in seconds, already moving with purpose. He picked up the fallen goblet, sniffed it, and his face went hard. Wolfsbane, he confirmed, and something else. This was crafted. This was no accident. Get the healer, Calen commanded, and his arms tightened around Maren. She was so light, so fragile. Her heartbeat was stuttering against his chest like a bird beating itself against a cage. Get every healer in this fortress, now. People scattered. Warriors ran. Servants flew through doorways. And through it all, Calen held Maren against him and felt the bond pulsing, weakening, dimming, and he understood with a clarity that was like ice water in his veins that if she died, he would not survive it. Rejection or not, broken bond or not, she was his mate. His wolf knew it. His blood knew it. Every cell in his body knew it. And the man who had stood on that dais and spoken the word no was nothing but a coward and a liar. Stay with me, he murmured against her hair. Maren, stay with me. Do not leave. Her hand moved. Weakly, trembling, her fingers found the front of his cloak and closed around the fabric, and she held on. The fortress healer was a man named Corvin Fell, gray-bearded and competent, but visibly out of his depth. He examined Maren in the Alpha's private chambers. Kalen had carried her there himself, refusing to let anyone else touch her, and his prognosis was grim. The wolfsbane alone would be treatable, Corvin said, his voice careful. A strong emetic, activated charcoal, time, but it has been combined with extract of nightbloom, a derivative of nightshade that is specifically lethal to omega physiology. It attacks the omega bond center, the gland at the base of the throat that produces the bonding hormones. In a bonded omega, the mate's pheromones can counteract the poison. The alpha scent triggers a healing response, but in an unbonded omega, he trailed off. "She is not unbonded," Kalen said from the chair beside the bed where Maren lay, pale as death and barely breathing. His voice was quiet, but it cut like a razor. Corvin looked at him with something close to incredulity. "My king, with respect, you rejected the bond, publicly, before the entire pack and the moon. In the eyes of the ritual and the law, this omega has no mate. Her body will not respond to alpha pheromones because the bond was severed before it could be sealed. Then unsever it. It is not something that can simply be undone. A rejection of this nature. How long does she have?" Corvin was silent for a moment. He looked at Maren, at the darkened veins crawling beneath her skin like roots, at the shallow, labored rise and fall of her chest. "Hours," he said finally. "Perhaps until dawn. The night bloom will reach her heart eventually. And when it does, leave, my king, leave, now. Send word to every healer, every herbalist, every wise woman within riding distance, and send for Novia Ashford. She is the girl's grandmother, a healer of the old ways. She lives in a cottage at the edge of the Thornwood. Ride fast." Corvin left. The door closed, and Kalen sat in the chair beside his dying mate and pressed his face into his hands and broke. It was a private breaking, silent, contained, visible only in the way his shoulders shook and his breath came in ragged gasps. His wolf was howling inside him, a sound of grief and fury and self-recrimination so loud it echoed through the pack bond and made every wolf in Greyhaven lift its head and whine. Alpha is in pain. Alpha is breaking. Something is terribly, terribly wrong. Finnick found him like that. He entered without knocking, beta privilege, and closed the door behind him and stood quietly until Kalen raised his head. His eyes were red but dry. Wolves did not weep. "Tell me," Kalen said. Finnick pulled a chair opposite and sat down. He placed the poisoned goblet on the table between them, wrapped in cloth. "The goblet is not from our stores. The metalwork is Eastern, Blackwell territory. The wine was doctored with professional precision. Wolfsbane and Nightbloom in exactly the ratio needed to kill an omega, slowly enough that it would look like illness, not murder. Whoever did this wanted her dead, but wanted it to seem natural. Lysara, I have no proof of that yet." "You do not need proof. You need eyes. The woman has been trying to eliminate every obstacle between herself and this throne since before my father was cold in the ground, and the only obstacle left after tonight was a dead woman walking." Finnick did not argue. He could not, because he was thinking the same thing. But he was a beta, and a beta's duty was to temper his alpha's rage with reason. "I will investigate, quietly. If Lysara did this, she will not have done it herself. She will have used intermediaries, and intermediaries leave trails. But Kalen," he paused, "there is something else I need to understand. Why did you do it? Why did you reject her? 3 weeks ago, when you found her at the market, I watched your wolf nearly tear you apart trying to get to her. You wanted her. I could feel it through the bond. So what happened between then and tonight?" Kalen was quiet for a long time. He looked at Maren, at the slow, fragile rhythm of her breathing, at the way her dark gold hair spilled across the pillow like a river of amber. Then he spoke. "A week after the market, I went to see the seer, Vera. She reads the bones and the stars, and she has never been wrong. I told her about the bond, about the omega, and she cast the bones and went still. She told me that if I bonded with Maren Ashford, the pack would fall. She said she saw fire and death in the collapse of Greyhaven's walls. She said the omega carried a curse, a bloodline curse from her mother's line, and that bonding with her would activate it and destroy everything I have built." He paused. His voice was raw. "I am the Alpha. The pack comes first, It must always come first. 1,000 lives weigh more than one, more than two. I would not doom my people for the sake of my own heart. Finnick stared at him. And you believe this? You who question every intelligence report 3 times before acting on it? You took a seer's word and rejected your fated mate without so much as investigating the claim? Vera has never been wrong. Vera is a woman who reads animal bones by firelight. She is not infallible, Kaelin. She is not the moon. What would you have had me do? I would have had you tell me. I would have had you let me look into it before you committed an irreversible act on the most sacred night of our tradition. Finnick's voice was harder than Kaelin had ever heard it. You rejected her, and someone poisoned her. Those 2 events are not unrelated. Whoever wanted Maren dead knew she would be vulnerable tonight, knew she would be devastated, isolated, off guard. The rejection created the perfect conditions for murder, whether you intended it or not. The words landed like blows. Kaelin flinched, not because they were cruel, but because they were true. Deep in the thornwood, in a cottage with a crooked chimney and a garden of moonflowers that bloomed only in darkness, Novia Ashford was already awake. She was 78 years old, small and bent, with hair like white silk and eyes the same amber as her granddaughter's, though dimmed by cataracts and sorrow. She had been a healer for 60 years, had served 2 Alpha Kings and delivered 300 children into the world, and she had known in her bones and her blood and the ancient intuition that never lied, that something terrible was happening to Maren. She had felt it at the moment of the rejection, a sympathetic snap in her own chest, as though a string connecting her to her granddaughter had been cut. And then, perhaps 30 minutes later, a second sensation, darker, more dangerous, a spreading cold that she recognized with the intimate familiarity of someone who had spent a lifetime fighting death. Poison. Someone had poisoned her girl. When the riders from Greyhaven arrived at her door, she was already dressed, her leather satchel packed with every remedy she possessed. She climbed onto the horse they brought for her, with the stubbornness of a woman who refused to acknowledge that her body was too old for riding, and they galloped through the night, the thornwood's dark canopy closing over them like a tunnel. She arrived at the fortress within the hour. The guards admitted her immediately, the Alpha's orders, and she was escorted through corridors of stone and torchlight until she reached the Alpha's chambers. When she entered, she saw her granddaughter lying on a bed that was far too large for her, her skin the color of old parchment, the poisoned veins mapping her body like dark rivers on a pale landscape. And she saw the Alpha King sitting beside her, holding her hand, looking like a man who had been hollowed out and filled with ash. Novia did not waste time on pleasantries. She crossed to the bed, opened her satchel, and began her examination with hands that were gnarled but steady. She smelled Maren's breath. She felt her pulse. She lifted her eyelids and studied the state of her pupils. She pressed her fingers to the bonding gland at the base of Maren's throat and felt the swelling there, the inflammation where the Nightbloom was targeting. Wolfsbane and Nightbloom, Novia said without looking up. Professional, deliberate, designed to kill an Omega specifically. Can you save her? Kaelin asked. His voice was stripped of all authority. He was not asking as a king. He was asking as a man who could not bear the answer if it was no. Novia straightened slowly. She turned those clouded amber eyes on him and studied him for a long, uncomfortable moment. You rejected her, she said. It was not a question. Yes. Why? The seer, Vera, told me the bond would destroy the pack. A curse in Maren's bloodline. Something shifted in Novia's face. It was subtle, a tightening around the eyes, a compression of the lips, but it spoke of recognition and anger. Vera told you this, she repeated. Vera, who has been in Lord Blackwell's pocket for the last 5 years, ever since he paid off her gambling debts and installed her in a cottage with a stipend that would make a merchant weep. The silence that followed was deafening. There is no curse, Novia said flatly. There has never been a curse. Maren's mother, my daughter, died of a winter fever, not a bloodline affliction. The Ashford line is clean. It has always been clean. Your seer lied to you, boy. She lied because someone paid her to lie and you were fool enough to believe it, and now my granddaughter is dying on your bed. Kaelin did not move. He did not speak, but something behind his eyes ignited. A cold, terrible fire that was not grief or guilt, but rage. Pure, focused, devastating rage. The kind that builds empires or burns them down. Can you save her? He asked again. Novia sat heavily on the edge of the bed. She took Maren's other hand, the one Kaelin was not holding, and stroked it gently. There is one remedy, she said. Only one. The night bloom attacks the bonding gland. In a bonded omega, the alpha's blood, the actual blood of her fated mate, can neutralize the poison. The alpha pheromones in the blood bind to the night bloom compounds and break them apart. I have seen it done once before many years ago. It works. She paused. But only if the bond is active, only if the alpha has claimed the omega. And you? She looked at him and her eyes were very hard. You rejected her. Can the bond be restored? Possibly. A rejected bond is damaged, but a fated bond is never truly dead. Not while both mates live. The rejection ceremony weakened it. Marin's acceptance would be needed to complete the restoration. And she is. Novia looked at her granddaughter's still face. She is not conscious. She may not be conscious again. The poison is advancing. Tell me what to do. You will need to bite her. The claiming bite, here, at the bonding gland. It will flood her system with your pheromones and reactivate the bond. But a claiming bite without the omega's consent is a violation of the highest order. It is forbidden by every law of every pack. And even if you do it, even if the bond reactivates, she may still reject you. Her wolf may refuse. And if her wolf refuses, the bite will do nothing, and she will die. Kalen looked at Marin. He looked at the gentle curve of her face, the dark veins crawling toward her heart, the shallow flutter of her breath. He looked at the woman the moon had given him, and he had thrown away because a paid liar told him a fairy tale. There is another way, Novia said quietly. My blood is Ashford blood. I share enough of her bloodline that I can reach her through the old healing arts. I can enter her mind, find her wolf, and ask her. Ask if she will accept the bond. If she says yes, even in her unconscious state, it is consent, and you can proceed. Do it, Kalen said instantly. Do whatever you need to do. Take whatever you need. I will give anything. Novia looked at him for a long moment. You will give your blood, she said. Literally. Once I have her consent, if I get her consent, I will cut your palm and feed your blood directly into the wound at her throat. Your wolf's blood, Kalen, not the man's. The wolf's. You will need to be partially shifted. Eyes, teeth, claws. The alpha pheromones are strongest when the wolf is present. I understand. And you will need to understand something else. Novia's voice was very quiet now, and very serious. If this works, if the bond restores and the poison is neutralized, you will be bonded to her, truly. Permanently. There will be no second rejection. The fated bond, once restored after a rejection, becomes absolute. You will feel everything she feels. Her pain, her joy, her anger. You will be bound to her more completely than any mated pair in the history of this pack. And she to you. Is that what you want? Kalen did not hesitate. It is what I have always wanted, he said, and his voice cracked on the last word. I never wanted to reject her. I was trying to protect my people. I was wrong. I was manipulated, and I was wrong, and she is paying the price for my cowardice. So yes, bond me to her. Give me the chance to spend the rest of my life earning her forgiveness, and I will take it gladly. Novia studied him. Then, slowly, she nodded. Hold her hand, she said. Do not let go, and pray to whatever you believe in that her wolf is still fighting. She closed her eyes, placed both hands on Marin's temples, and began to chant in a language that had been old when the fortress was new. In the space between consciousness and death, Marin drifted. She was in a forest, not the Thornwood, but somewhere else, somewhere that existed only in the geography of her own soul. The trees were silver-barked and immensely tall, their canopy so high above that the leaves were stars, and the ground beneath her bare feet was soft with moss that glowed a faint living green. There was no pain here. There was no emptiness. There was only stillness, and the distant sound of water, and a wolf, her wolf. Not the collapsed, broken thing that had been hiding in her chest since the rejection, but her wolf as it truly was. A beautiful creature with fur the color of moonlight and amber eyes that matched her own. It lay beneath one of the silver trees, its great head on its paws, and when Marin approached, it lifted those eyes to her, and she saw grief, deep, patient, understanding grief. I am dying, Marin said. It was not a question. The wolf regarded her steadily. The wine was poisoned. I drank it, and she faltered. Even here, in this quiet space, the word hurt. He does not want me. He made that clear. Her wolf stood. It was larger than she remembered, or perhaps she had never seen it clearly before. this luminous creature that was the other half of her soul. It padded toward her with silent grace and pressed its muzzle into her palm, and Maren felt warmth flood through her, a gentleness so absolute it made her want to weep. And then a voice, not a sound exactly, but an awareness, her grandmother's presence, threading through the silver forest like a warm wind. Maren, child, listen to me. Grandmother, you are dying. The poison is in your blood, but there is a way to save you. Your Alpha, your mate, his blood can heal you. He is there beside you. He is holding your hand, and he has not let go, and his wolf is howling for you, child. Howling. He rejected me. He was deceived. The seer lied. There is no curse. It was a trick, a political manipulation to clear the path for the Blackwell woman. He did not reject you because he did not want you. He rejected you because he was told the bond would destroy his people, and he chose his duty over his heart, and he was wrong, and he knows it, and he is shattered by it. Maren stood in the silver forest and felt the words settle into her like stones dropping into water. Her wolf pressed against her legs, warm and solid and waiting. If you accept him, Novia's voice continued, the bond will restore. His blood will heal the poison. You will live. But it is your choice, Maren. Only yours. Your wolf must agree. No one can force this. And if I refuse, a long pause, then you will die, and he will follow. A rejected alpha who loses his fated mate to death. His wolf will not survive it. He may live on physically for a time, but the man you saw on that dais will cease to exist. He will become something hollow, something dangerous. Maren closed her eyes. She thought of the market, the lightning strike of recognition, the way her wolf had woken and whispered mine with such certainty that it had rearranged the architecture of her soul. She thought of the dais, the word no, and the way it had broken something inside her that she did not know could break. She thought of the moment in the great hall when she had felt arms around her, strong and desperate and shaking, and a voice saying, "Stay with me." She thought of his face, the grief in it, the agony he had been trying to hide, the fact that he had not looked away from duty, but had been crushed by it. He was trying to protect them, she murmured. Her wolf nudged her hand. He was wrong, but he was not cruel. Her wolf sat back on its haunches and looked at her with those amber eyes, and Maren understood. This was her wolf's answer. I trust you. Whatever you decide, I am with you. Maren opened her eyes. She looked at the silver trees, at the stars that were leaves, at the luminous creature beside her that was the truest part of herself, and she made her choice. Yes, she said, I accept him. The silver forest blazed with light. In the Alpha's chambers, Novia Ashford opened her eyes and exhaled a breath she had been holding for 3 minutes. She said yes, the old woman whispered. Do it now, quickly. The poison is near her heart. Kalen did not need to be told twice. He stood, and as he did, he led his wolf forward, not a full shift, but a partial one, the most controlled and difficult form of shifting that existed. His eyes blazed gold, the pale gray consumed by molten amber gold fire. His canines lengthened, sharpening into fangs. His nails darkened and curved into claws. The air around him thickened with alpha pheromones, a scent that was cedar and iron and winter wind, overwhelming and commanding. Novia produced a knife from her satchel, a small curved blade, very sharp. Your palm, she said. Kalen extended his left hand without flinching, and she drew the blade across his palm in one clean stroke. Blood welled up, dark, rich, almost black with the concentration of alpha essence. It was not normal blood. When a wolf was partially shifted, the blood carried the full potency of the wolf's spirit, a living force that could heal or destroy depending on intent. Now the bite, Novia instructed, at the bonding gland. Gentle. This is not a battle wound. This is a vow. Kalen leaned over Maren. He brushed her hair from her throat with fingers that trembled despite his iron control. The bonding gland was visible as a slight swelling at the junction of her neck and shoulder, and it was inflamed, red, angry. The poison concentrated there like a besieging army. He lowered his mouth to the gland, and for one moment, he paused. He pressed his forehead to hers. I am sorry, he breathed. I am sorry for what I did to you. I will spend the rest of my life making it right. But first, I need you to live. He bit down, gently, precisely, his fangs piercing the skin over the bonding gland with the exact pressure needed to claim but not to harm. At the same time, he pressed his bleeding palm to the wound, and his blood, Wolf's blood, alpha blood, mate's blood, poured into her through the open channel of the claiming bite. The effect was immediate and violent. Marin's body arched off the bed, every muscle seizing. The darkened veins beneath her skin pulsed, and then began to lighten. The alpha blood was moving through her, meeting the poison, breaking it down compound by compound. The wolfsbane dissolved first. It was the weaker poison, and alpha pheromones were its natural antidote. The night bloom fought harder. It clung to the bonding gland, to the channels of the bond itself, and for one terrible moment, Kalen felt resistance, felt the poison pushing back against his blood as though it were alive and furious at being challenged. He pushed harder. He poured everything he had into the bond. Not just blood, but will. Not just pheromones, but the full force of his wolf's devotion. A love that he had been too afraid and too foolish to acknowledge until it was almost too late. His wolf howled, and it was not a howl of pain or grief, but of claim, absolute and irrevocable. She is mine, and I am hers, and nothing in this world or any other will take her from me. The bond ignited. It came back to life not as a gentle warmth, but as a conflagration. A roaring, blinding, all-consuming fire that burned through both of them and left them remade. Marin gasped. A real gasp, a living gasp, her lungs expanding fully for the first time in hours, and her eyes flew open. They were not amber anymore. They were gold. Brilliant, blazing gold. The same shade as the wolf's eyes in her soul forest, and they were looking directly at Kalen with an intensity that could have melted iron. "You," she whispered, and her voice was weak, but it was there. It was real. She was alive. "You came back. I never left," he said, and his voice broke completely. "I was always here. I was always yours." Novia Ashford sat back in her chair and closed her eyes and permitted herself, for the first time in 60 years of professional healing, to weep. The news spread through the fortress like fire through dry grass. The Omega lived. The Alpha had claimed her. The bond was restored. And by dawn, when Marin had been bathed and dressed in clean linens and was sleeping, truly sleeping, her color returning, her veins clearing, the claiming mark at her throat healing into a silver crescent that glowed faintly in the morning light, the entire political landscape of Greyhaven had shifted on its axis. Finnick had not slept. He had spent the night in the dungeons beneath the fortress, where Greyhaven's intelligence operations were conducted. The dungeons were not the damp, rat-infested pits of common imagination. They were a network of stone rooms, well lit and dry, where information was extracted through means that ranged from civilized questioning to methods that were considerably less so. Finnick preferred the civilized approach, which was fortunate because the person he was questioning did not require much persuasion. Vera, the seer, had been brought to the fortress at midnight by 2 of Finnick's agents. She was a woman of about 50, gaunt and sharp-featured, with eyes that darted constantly and fingers that could not stop moving. She had been well paid for her lies, but she had not been paid enough to die for them, and when Finnick explained, calmly, precisely, with the particular brand of cheerful menace that was his specialty, that the Alpha King's fated mate had been poisoned on the same night his false prophecy had stripped her of protection, Vera folded like a wet parchment. She confessed everything. Lord Osric Blackwell had approached her 6 months ago, when rumors of a possible fated mate for the young Alpha began circulating among those who watched for such things. Osric had been cultivating the Thorburn alliance for years, positioning his daughter Lysara as the obvious choice for queen, and the emergence of a true fated bond threatened to destroy everything he had built. He paid Vera to fabricate the prophecy, the curse, the destruction of the pack, the fire and death. He paid her handsomely and he threatened her thoroughly, and she had done as she was told. But the poison, Vera swore she knew nothing about the poison. That was not part of the plan, at least not any plan she had been told about. The prophecy was supposed to be enough. Kalen was supposed to reject the Omega. Lysara was supposed to step into the void, and the Ashford girl was supposed to crawl back to her cottage and disappear into obscurity. Someone escalated, Finnick murmured, making notes in his leather-bound journal. Someone decided that rejection was not enough, that Marin needed to die. Vera's eyes went very wide, and she shook her head. It was not me. I swear on the bones I read. I would never. I am a seer, not a murderer. No, Finnick agreed pleasantly. You are a liar, but I believe you about this. The poison came from someone else, someone closer to the feast, someone who had access to pewter goblets from the Eastern Territories and the botanical knowledge to combine wolfsbane and nightbloom in lethal proportions. He left Vera in the care of his agents and went to find the answer to a question that had been nagging him since he first examined the poisoned goblet. Who in Greyhaven had the means, the motive, and the opportunity? The means was specialized. Wolfsbane was common enough in the Thornwood, but nightbloom was rare. It grew only in the high eastern valleys, in Blackwell territory. Someone had brought it to the fortress specifically for this purpose. The motive was obvious. With the bond rejected and Maren dead, there would be no possibility of restoration. Kaelin would have no fated mate. The path to Lysara would be permanently clear. And the opportunity. The feast had been crowded, chaotic, and the Omega table was in a dim corner far from the high table. Anyone could have placed a goblet there in the confusion following the rejection. Anyone, but not just anyone, would have had nightbloom extract already prepared and ready to use. That required planning, forethought. The kind of cold calculation that suggested the poisoning had been planned well in advance. A contingency, perhaps, in case the rejection alone did not achieve the desired result. Finnick's investigation led him through a chain of servants, guards, and minor nobles that wound through the fortress like a serpent. A kitchen maid had seen a woman in a red hood near the Omega table during the commotion. A guard had noticed someone slipping through the servants' passage shortly before the feast horn sounded. A stable boy had found an empty vial in a drain behind the Great Hall, and when Finnick had the vial analyzed by Corvin Fell, the residue was unmistakable. Concentrated nightbloom extract. The trail led, with the relentless inevitability of water finding its level, to a single door on the third floor of the guest wing, the chambers that had been assigned to Lady Lysara Blackwell. Maren woke to afternoon light streaming through windows made of real glass, a luxury she had never experienced. The light fell across a bed wider than her entire room at the cottage, across sheets of linen so fine they felt like water against her skin, across a coverlet of dark fur that was softer than anything she had touched in her life. For a moment she did not know where she was, and then the bond pulsed in her chest. Strong, warm, golden, alive, and she remembered everything. She sat up slowly. Her body ached, but it was the ache of recovery, not of poison. The dark veins were gone. Her skin was her own again, pale from the ordeal, but clear, unmarked. At the base of her throat, where the claiming bite had been, she felt a slight tenderness, and when she touched it with careful fingers, she found a mark, a raised crescent shape that tingled beneath her fingertips and sent a warm shiver through her when she pressed it. "Careful with that," said a voice from the doorway. "Touch it too much and you will summon him, and I have barely managed to convince him to eat something and change his clothes. If he comes charging back in here, I will hold you personally responsible." Thessa stood in the doorway with a tray of food and a grin that was trying very hard to contain itself. Behind her, Novia Ashford hobbled in on her cane, her amber eyes sharp and assessing. "Grandmother," Maren breathed. "Do not grandmother me." "Eat. You have been poisoned, claimed, and bonded in the space of 12 hours, and your body needs fuel." Novia settled herself in the chair beside the bed, the same chair Kaelin had occupied all night, and studied her granddaughter with the clinical attention of a healer and the fierce love of a woman who had raised her from infancy. "How do you feel?" Maren considered the question honestly. "Strange," she said. "I feel full, as though something that was always missing has been put back, and I can feel him." She pressed a hand to her chest. "He is nearby. He is worried and angry, very angry, but not at me." "Good," Novia said briskly. "His anger is well directed for once. The seer has confessed. The prophecy was a fabrication paid for by Lord Blackwell, and the poison trail leads to the Blackwell daughter." Maren stared at her. The information was coming too fast for her still recovering mind. "Lysara poisoned me? It appears so. The beta, Finnick, has been piecing it together all night." "Maren," Novia leaned forward and took her granddaughter's hand. "The woman tried to kill you to clear her path to the throne, and the man you are now bonded to rejected you because he was lied to by a corrupt seer in Blackwell's employ. The entire thing, from the false prophecy to the poisoned wine, was orchestrated to keep you and the Alpha apart." Thessa set the tray down on the bed with a clatter. "What I want to know," she said with the particular indignation of a woman who had watched her best friend nearly die, is what the Alpha King intends to do about it. As if summoned, and perhaps through the bond he was, the door opened and Kalen Thorburn walked in. He had changed from his ceremonial clothes into simple dark trousers and a gray tunic that was slightly too worn to be kingly. His dark hair was disheveled in a way that suggested he had been running his hands through it repeatedly. There were shadows under his eyes. He looked exhausted and fierce and uncertain, an expression that Maren suspected very few people had ever seen on the Alpha King's face. He stopped just inside the door. His eyes went to Maren immediately, and the bond surged between them like a current. She felt his relief, vast, oceanic, almost unbearable, and beneath it, a guilt so deep it had its own gravity. He could feel her too, she realized. He could feel the mixture of confusion and wariness, and the traitorous, involuntary warmth that the bond was sending through her at the sight of him. They were open to each other now, their emotions shared, their inner worlds visible, and neither of them could hide. "You are awake," he said, and his voice was careful, as though he were approaching a wounded animal that might startle. "I am," Maren replied. She held his gaze. She was not going to make this easy for him. Bonded or not, saved or not, he had stood on that dais and broken her heart in front of 1,000 people, and the scar of that was not something that healed as quickly as poison. Kalen read her emotions through the bond and accepted them without flinching. "I owe you an explanation," he said, "and an apology, and probably a great deal more than that. But first," he turned to look at the 3 women in the room, and when he spoke again, his voice was pure alpha. "Lady Lysera Blackwell and Lord Osric Blackwell are being arrested as we speak. Finnick has compiled sufficient evidence to charge them with attempted murder, conspiracy, and treason against the crown. Their assets will be seized, their vassal pacts given the choice to submit to Greyhaven directly or leave the territory. The seer Vera will stand trial as an accomplice." He paused. "And I am calling a full pack assembly for tonight, at which I will publicly acknowledge the bond, publicly apologize for the rejection, and publicly name Maren Ashford as my mate and my queen." Silence. Thessa's mouth was open. Novia's eyes were narrow. And Maren felt the bond vibrate with the absolute sincerity behind every word, felt the iron resolve in him, felt that he meant this with every fiber of his being, and would fight the entire world to make it happen. But she also felt something else. She felt her own anger, righteous, justified, unfinished. "Sit down," she said quietly. Kalen blinked. It was possible that no one had told the Alpha King to sit down in his own chambers before, but he sat. He pulled the chair from the desk and sat facing her, and his expression was open and waiting. "You rejected me in front of 1,000 people," Maren said. Her voice was steady, but the bond betrayed her. He could feel the tremor beneath, the phantom pain. "You did not ask me. You did not tell me. You did not send a messenger to say there was a complication or a concern. You called my name, summoned me before the entire pack, let me walk to that dais with hope tearing me apart, and then you said no. You broke the sacred cup. You broke the ritual. You broke me." She paused. "I was an Omega. I had nothing. No power, no standing, no protection. And you took the one thing I did have, the bond, the proof that I mattered, that I was chosen, and you destroyed it in front of everyone I have ever known." Kalen sat and listened and did not look away. Through the bond she felt his response. Not defensiveness, not excuses, but a grief and shame so profound it was like standing in a cold rain. "You are right," he said. "Everything you have said is right. I was deceived, but that does not excuse the manner of what I did. I should have spoken to you first. I should have told you what I was told and given you the chance to respond. I treated you as though your feelings were irrelevant, as though the bond was mine alone to accept or reject, and that was wrong. I was a coward and a fool, and the fact that I was trying to protect the pack does not mitigate the harm I caused you." Maren studied him. She searched the bond for any trace of insincerity, any hidden motive, any shade of the political calculation that had characterized every alpha she had ever heard of. She found nothing, only a man in pain, laid bare by a bond that would not let him lie. "This will not be easy," she said finally. "You understand that. I am bonded to you, and I accept the bond, because my wolf chose you, and I trust my wolf. But trust between us, between the woman and the man, that is something you will have to build, and it will take time. I will take whatever time you need, and I will not be a decorative queen. If I am to lead beside you, I lead. The Omegas of this pack have been treated as lesser for generations. That changes. Something shifted in Kaelin's expression. It was not surprise. It was recognition, as though he were seeing her clearly for the first time, not as the fragile Omega he had tried to protect from a distance, but as the woman she actually was, strong, principled, and entirely capable of commanding a room. It changes, he agreed. Novia Ashford leaned back in her chair and smiled for the first time in days. The arrest of Lady Lysara Blackwell was not quiet. Finnick had anticipated resistance. The Blackwell family did not go gently into anything, and he brought a contingent of 12 warriors, all personally loyal to the Alpha, all armored and armed with silver-tipped weapons in case things went badly. They need not have worried about Lord Osric, who, when presented with the evidence, the seer's confession, the night bloom vial, the testimony of the kitchen maid, the pewter goblet traced to the Blackwell metalworks, turned the color of old cheese and began negotiating his surrender with the desperate efficiency of a man who understood that his political career was over and his primary concern was keeping his head attached to his body. Lysara was different. When Finnick entered her chambers, flanked by 4 warriors, she was standing at the window in a dressing gown of black silk, her dark hair loose around her shoulders, and she did not turn around. The room was immaculate, not a single item out of place, every surface clean, every garment hung with precision. It was the room of someone who controlled everything. "Lady Lysara Blackwell," Finnick said, his voice pleasant and formal. "You are charged with the attempted murder of Meryn Ashford by means of poison, conspiracy with the seer Vera to fabricate a false prophecy, and treason against the Alpha Crown. You will be held in the fortress dungeons until trial." Lysara turned then, and her face was a masterwork. She was not afraid. She was not angry. She was amused. Her violet eyes sparkled with a dark humor that made even Finnick, who feared very little, feel a chill along his spine. "Treason," she said, tasting the word. "Because I tried to remove a peasant herbalist from a throne she has no business occupying. Because I attempted to spare Greyhaven the humiliation of an Omega Queen. Tell me, Beta, is it treason to love a kingdom more than its king does?" "It is treason to murder the Alpha's fated mate, yes, regardless of your editorial opinion on her social standing. I did not kill her. She lives. Your charge is attempted murder at best. Attempt is sufficient for a death sentence under Greyhaven law, as you well know." Something finally cracked in Lysara's composure. A flicker of fear, quickly masked, but not quickly enough. She covered it with contempt. "He will regret this. Kaelin Thorburn will bind himself to a girl who smells like chamomile and dirt, and in a year, in 5 years, when the pack is weakened by the loss of the Blackwell Alliance and the Eastern Mines and the 3 vassal packs that answer to my father's name, he will remember that I offered him strength, I offered him power, I offered him an equal." Finnick stepped forward and clasped the iron cuffs around her wrists with the practiced ease of someone who had done this before. "You offered him a cage," he said quietly. "And the difference between you and Meryn Ashford is that she never asked him for anything at all, and he still chose her." Lysara's eyes blazed, but she said nothing more. She allowed herself to be led from the room with her chin held high, every step a performance, every movement a declaration that she would not break, and perhaps she would not. But she was finished. Finnick knew it. Lysara knew it. And as the dungeon door closed behind her, even the stones of Greyhaven seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. The trial took place 3 days later, in the great hall where the poisoning had occurred. The long tables had been removed and replaced with rows of benches, and every seat was filled. Warriors, nobles, merchants, healers, servants, Omegas. The entire pack, from the highest to the lowest, had been summoned to witness justice. Kaelin presided from the high seat, dressed in his formal black with the wolf head brooch at his throat. Beside him, in the seat that had been empty for 3 years, the seat that had belonged to every Alpha's mate since the founding of Greyhaven, sat Meryn. She wore a gown of deep midnight blue, simple in cut but exquisitely made, a gift from the fortress seamstress who had been so moved by the Omega's story that she had worked through 2 nights to complete it. Meryn's honey gold hair was braided and pinned with silver, and the claiming mark at her throat was visible, deliberately so, a crescent of silver against her fair skin that caught the light whenever she moved. She was nervous, and through the bond Kaelin felt it and sent her a wave of steady, grounding warmth. She glanced at him, and the smallest smile crossed her face. and the pack, watching every interaction between their alpha and his newly bonded mate with the avid attention of 1,000 very invested spectators, collectively exhaled. The trial was thorough and merciless. Finnick presented the evidence with the precision of a man who had once considered a career in law before choosing violence instead. The seer's confession was read aloud. The Nightbloom vial was displayed. The chain of evidence from the poisoned goblet to the Blackwell Metalworks was laid out link by link. Servants testified. Guards testified. Corvin Fell testified about the specific lethality of the poison combination and confirmed that without the Alpha's blood intervention, Marin would have died before dawn. Lord Osric Blackwell, who had been cooperating with the investigation in exchange for leniency, confirmed his role in paying the seer. He claimed, and Finnick believed him, grudgingly, that he had not known about the poison. His plan had extended only to the false prophecy and the arranged rejection. The murder attempt had been Lysara's addition, a contingency she had prepared on her own. Lysara herself stood before the court in chains and admitted nothing. She denied the poisoning. She denied knowledge of the Nightbloom. She claimed the evidence was fabricated, that she was being framed by the new Omega Queen to eliminate a rival. She was eloquent and passionate and utterly unconvincing, because the evidence against her was overwhelming, and because the pack could see the truth in their Alpha's eyes. And through the pack bond, they could feel it. The Alpha's certainty was absolute. His wolf knew who had tried to kill his mate, and a wolf did not lie. The verdict was unanimous among the council elders, guilty of attempted murder and treason. The sentence, banishment from Greyhaven territory, the stripping of all titles and lands, and the permanent dissolution of the Blackwell Alliance. Lord Osric, for his lesser but still significant role, received banishment as well, though his vassal packs were offered the choice to remain in Greyhaven's territory under direct Alpha authority. 2 of the 3 chose to stay. Lysara received the sentence in silence. She did not beg, she did not weep. She looked at Kaelin with those violet eyes, and then she looked at Marin, and the hatred in her gaze was a living thing, a fire that would not die, a promise that this was not over. And then she was led away, and the great hall erupted in murmurs and whispers and the particular energy of a community processing a seismic shift in its power structure. It was Marin who stood and silenced the hall. She rose from her seat beside the Alpha, and the murmurs died. 1,000 pairs of eyes turned to the Omega, the herbalist, the commoner, the girl in the blue wool dress who had been rejected and poisoned and saved and bonded in the span of a single night. She stood straight, her hands steady, the claiming mark visible at her throat like a badge of survival. And when she spoke, her voice carried. "I know what many of you are thinking," she said. "You are thinking that an Omega has no place in this seat, that an herbalist from the Thornwood cannot be queen, that the traditions of rank and hierarchy that have governed this pack for centuries should not be overturned by a single bond, no matter how sacred." She paused. "You may be right. I have no training in politics. I have no noble blood. I have no armies, no wealth, no alliances to offer. What I have is this. I have spent my life healing your children, your elders, your warriors. I have walked to homes in blizzards to bring medicine to the sick. I have set broken bones and stitched wounds and brewed teas for women in labor and held the hands of the dying. I know this pack, not from the high table, but from the ground. And I tell you now that the ground is where the cracks are, and the cracks have been growing." She took a breath. The hall was utterly silent. Omegas in this pack live in poverty. They are denied education, denied representation, denied basic protections under law. They serve, and they serve well, and they are invisible. This ends. I will not sit in this seat and pretend that the pack is whole when half of it is broken. If I am to be your queen, and I understand that many of you did not choose this and do not want it, then I will be queen for all of Greyhaven. Not just the warriors, not just the nobles, all. She sat down. Her heart was hammering, and through the bond Kaelin felt her terror and her courage existing in the same breath, and he felt something he had not felt since the day his father died. Hope. The hall was quiet for one long, breathless moment. Then the old warrior who had prayed for Marin on the night of the rejection stood up from his bench, placed his fist over his heart, and bowed. The gesture was ancient, an acknowledgement of authority, of respect, of a leader recognized. One by one, others stood. Warriors, merchants, healers, servants, Omegas, Dozens of Omegas rising from the back of the hall where they had been seated in the lowest section, standing and placing their fists over their hearts with tears running down their faces. Not everyone stood. Some sat with their arms folded and their expressions closed, unconvinced, unwilling. That was their right. But the majority rose, and the sound that filled the great hall was not applause but something deeper, a resonance, a vibration, the sound of a pack reorganizing itself around a new center of gravity. Kaelin rose beside her and took her hand. Through the bond, she felt his pride and his gratitude and the fierce protective love of a man who had come within hours of losing the best thing the moon had ever given him, and was determined to never make that mistake again. The weeks that followed were not easy. Maren had spoken truth when she told Kaelin that trust would take time, and the building of that trust was a slow, sometimes painful, sometimes beautiful process. The bond made hiding impossible. They could feel each other's emotions, sense each other's presence, and this radical transparency was both a gift and a challenge. When Kaelin woke from nightmares about the night of the rejection, Maren felt his guilt crash through her like a wave, and she would lie in the dark and breathe through it, letting him feel her steadiness in return. When Maren walked through the fortress and caught whispers, "Omega, commoner, not one of us," Kaelin felt her hurt like a blade in his own chest, and he had to learn to let her fight those battles herself, rather than tearing through the fortress to confront every whisperer personally. They learned each other, not in the explosive, passionate way of songs and stories, but in the quiet, daily way of two people building something real. Kaelin learned that Maren hummed while she worked, that she could identify any plant in the thornwood by touch alone, that she had a sharp and unexpected wit that emerged in the most surprising moments. Maren learned that Kaelin read philosophy by candlelight when he could not sleep, that he had a particular fondness for the fortress dogs that bordered on undignified, that beneath the granite exterior of the Alpha King was a man who carried the weight of 1,000 lives and felt every single one. The first time Maren saw him shift, she was standing in the inner courtyard at dusk, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and amber. She felt him approach through the bond, a surge of warmth, a particular quality of attention that she was learning to recognize as the way he felt when he looked at her. She turned and saw him standing at the edge of the courtyard, and there was something different in his eyes, something wild. "I want to show you," he said, "if you will allow it." She nodded and he shifted. It was not the controlled partial shift she had witnessed during the healing. This was full transformation, the dissolution of the man and the emergence of the wolf. His body rippled, expanded, reformed. His skin darkened and sprouted fur, thick, black, silver-tipped. His bones rearranged with sounds that should have been terrible, but somehow were not. And then, where a man had stood there, was a wolf, enormous, easily twice the size of a natural wolf, with fur like a midnight storm and eyes that blazed gold. The Alpha Wolf, the most powerful creature in the territory, capable of tearing through steel and running for days without rest. And this vast, terrifying beast walked toward Maren with the gentle caution of a creature afraid of frightening a butterfly. He stopped in front of her and lowered his great head. And Maren, the Omega, the healer, the woman who had been told all her life that she was the weakest member of the pack, reached out and placed her hand on the Alpha Wolf's muzzle. The bond between them blazed. Through it, she felt his wolf's joy, pure, uncomplicated, overwhelming. "This is her, this is our mate, ours, and she is touching us. And nothing in the world has ever felt like this." Maren laughed. It was the first time she had laughed since the night of the festival, and the sound rang through the courtyard like a bell, and the Alpha Wolf's tail, the great black silver-tipped tail of the most feared predator in 3 territories, wagged. From a window above the courtyard, Finnick Graves watched this scene with an expression of profound satisfaction and murmured, "About time." Thessa, standing beside him with a bowl of stolen kitchen almonds, nodded emphatically. 3 months after the Moonfire Festival, on a morning bright with the first warmth of early spring, Maren stood in the Great Hall and presented to the Pack Council the first Omega reform legislation in Greyhaven's history. She had spent those 3 months working, learning the laws, consulting with scholars and historians, meeting with Omegas from every corner of the territory to understand their needs and grievances. The legislation was comprehensive: mandatory education for Omega children, legal protections against exploitation, a seat on the Pack Council for an elected Omega representative, access to healing services, and the abolition of the practice of assigning Omegas to households without their consent. The council was divided. Some supported the reforms immediately, the younger members, the progressives, those who had been moved by Marin's speech at the trial. Others resisted fiercely. An old noble named Councillor Baron argued that overturning centuries of tradition would weaken the pack's structure. A warrior captain named Dravos Kale, a man who had quietly hoped for the Alpha seat himself and harbored a particular resentment toward anything that altered the power dynamics he hoped one day to exploit, argued that Omegas were biologically unsuited to education and leadership, and that elevating them was against the natural order. Marin listened to every argument. She did not shout. She did not cry. She did not appeal to emotion or invoke her personal suffering. She responded with facts. She cited the healing skills of Omega herbalists that had saved hundreds of warrior lives in the border wars. She referenced the Omega women who ran the fortress kitchens and laundries and nurseries with a logistical efficiency that would make any military commander weep with envy. She presented a detailed economic analysis showing that educated, empowered Omegas would increase the pack's productivity by an estimated 30% within 5 years. Kalen watched from the Alpha's seat and said nothing. This was Marin's battle, and she had asked him to let her fight it. Through the bond, he sent her strength and confidence, and she drew on it like a well. But the words and the will were entirely her own. The vote was close, 7-5 in favor of the reforms, with 2 abstentions. It was enough. The legislation passed, and when the council adjourned, the Omegas who had gathered in the gallery above the hall wept openly. Some of them had been waiting their entire lives for this moment, for someone with the power and the courage to stand in the halls of authority and say, "You matter." That evening, as Marin sat in the Alpha's chambers reviewing the implementation plans, Kalen came and sat beside her. He did not speak for a long moment. He simply sat, and through the bond, she felt his admiration. Not the admiration of a king for a political ally, but the deep, bone-level awe of a man watching the woman he loves reshape the world. "You are remarkable," he said finally. "I am tired," she replied, but she was smiling. That too. He reached over and tucked a strand of honey-gold hair behind her ear, and the gentleness of the gesture, from hands that could shift into claws, from a man who could become a beast, made her breath catch. "I need to tell you something," she said. He waited. "I forgive you." The bond between them went perfectly still. Kalen looked at her, and for one moment his composure, the iron self-control of the Alpha King, dissolved completely. His eyes shone. His jaw trembled. He opened his mouth and could not speak. "I forgive you," Marin said again softly. "Not because the bond compels me to, and not because you have earned it, though you have been earning it every day with every choice. I forgive you because holding on to the pain is not who I want to be, and because I can feel, through this bond, who you truly are. Not the king who rejected me, the man who sat beside my bed all night and begged me not to die, the man who gave his blood to save me, the man who let me fight my own battles, even when every instinct told him to fight them for me." She reached out and placed her hand on his chest, over his heart. "I forgive you, Kalen, and I choose you, not because the moon chose you for me, but because I know you now, and I choose you anyway." He pulled her into his arms. He held her with the careful, absolute tenderness of someone holding the most precious thing in the world, and she felt through the bond a love so fierce and so complete that it erased, in one cleansing wave, every shadow that had lingered between them. Outside the window, the full moon rose over Greyhaven, and somewhere in the distant mountains, a wolf howled, long, resonant, triumphant, and the pack answered. But the story did not end with forgiveness, because peace in Greyhaven was a fragile thing, and there were shadows that the moonlight could not reach. Dravos Kale had not taken the council vote well. He was a man of 35, powerfully built, with a scarred face and cold blue eyes and the particular brand of ambition that disguised itself as patriotism. He had served in the border wars with distinction, commanded the loyalty of a significant faction of warriors, and had spent the last 3 years positioning himself as the natural successor should anything happen to the Alpha King who had, in Dravos's estimation, grown dangerously soft. The Omega reforms were the final proof of what Dravos had suspected. Kalen Thorburn was compromised, bewitched. Controlled by a common Omega who had bewitched his wolf and was systematically dismantling the warrior traditions that had made Greyhaven great. Dravos did not share these thoughts openly. He was too clever for that. Instead, he began to gather allies, quietly, carefully, in the shadows where discontent breathes. He found them among the older warriors who resented change, among the nobles who had profited from Omega labor and now faced regulation, among the merchants who saw the Blackwell trade collapse as evidence of instability. He whispered that the Alpha was weakened by the bond, that the Omega Queen was manipulating him, that Greyhaven needed strong traditional leadership, or it would fall to its enemies. He also made contact with someone outside the territory, someone who had a very personal interest in Greyhaven's destabilization. Lysara Blackwell had been banished but not broken. She had retreated to a small holding in the borderlands, technically outside Greyhaven's jurisdiction, and she had spent her exile cultivating rage and plotting revenge. When Dravos's messenger arrived, she received him with the warmth of a woman who had been waiting for exactly this moment. An alliance was formed. Lysara had intelligence. She knew the fortress's defenses, its supply routes, its political vulnerabilities. Dravos had warriors, 50, then 100, then 200 men who would follow him if he challenged the Alpha. Together, they planned a coup. The plan was elegant in its brutality. On the night of the spring equinox, a night when the pack would gather for a feast and the Alpha's guard would be ceremonial rather than tactical, Dravos would issue a formal challenge for the Alpha seat. Under pack law, any warrior of sufficient rank could challenge the Alpha to single combat, and the challenge could not be refused. While Kalen was occupied with the fight, Lysara's agents, mercenaries hired from the borderlands, not pack members and therefore invisible to the pack bond, would seize the fortress gates, secure the armory, and take Marin hostage. With the Omega Queen as leverage, Dravos would force Kalen to surrender, and if he did not surrender, if the fight went against Dravos, Lysara had provided a backup plan. A crossbow bolt coated in silver and wolfsbane, to be fired from the shadows at the moment of vulnerability. It was a plan that accounted for every variable except one: Finnick Graves. Finnick had not survived 3 years as Greyhaven's beta by being oblivious. He had informants in every corner of the territory, a network of intelligence that operated with the quiet efficiency of a spider's web, and he had been watching Dravos Kyle with growing unease for weeks. When one of his agents reported unusual movement of mercenary forces near the borderlands, Finnick connected the dots with the speed and accuracy that made him the most dangerous man in Greyhaven, who wasn't an Alpha. He brought his findings to Kalen on the eve of the equinox. The evidence was not yet conclusive. Suspicions, patterns, movements, but no smoking weapon. Kalen listened and made a decision that surprised even his beta. "Let him challenge me," the Alpha said. Finnick stared. "You cannot be serious. If Dravos wants the Alpha seat, let him try to take it. In single combat, in front of the pack, with the laws of challenge fully observed. I will not hide from a challenger, Finnick. That is not how an Alpha rules." "And the mercenaries? The crossbow? The plan to seize Marin?" Kalen's eyes went cold. The gold flickered in the gray, his wolf pressing close. "That is where you come in. You have until tomorrow night to find every mercenary, disarm every trap, and neutralize every agent Lysara has placed inside our walls. Can you do that?" Finnick allowed himself a slow, dangerous smile. "Give me 12 hours. You have 10. Then I had better start now." He did, and he was brilliant. In the space of 10 hours, Finnick and his agents identified and captured 14 mercenaries hidden in various locations around the fortress, disguised as merchants, servants, and traveling musicians. They found the crossbow already positioned in a gallery overlooking the challenge arena, loaded with a silver-tipped bolt that gleamed with a suspicious oily sheen. They found a cache of weapons hidden in the cellar beneath the armory, and a set of forged keys that would have given the conspirators access to the fortress gates. They also found one more thing: a letter, written in Lysara's hand, addressed to Dravos, outlining the final phase of the plan. It was detailed, methodical, and damning, and it confirmed something that made Finnick's blood run cold. The plan included not just the seizure of Marin, but her execution. A public execution, in front of the pack, as a demonstration that the era of Omega Queens was over. Finnick delivered this letter to Kalen 1 hour before the equinox feast. The Alpha read it in silence. Then he folded it carefully, placed it inside his tunic, and stood. "Increase the guard around Marin," he said, his voice perfectly level. "Triple it. I want Thessa and Novia with her at all times, and I want 2 of our best archers positioned with line of sight to every gallery in the arena. Already done. Good. Kalen met his beta's eyes. And Finnick, thank you. For everything. For seeing what I was too blind to see. For protecting what I was too foolish to protect. You have been the best beta a man could ask for. Finnick blinked. In 3 years of service, Kalen had never said anything like that. Are you getting sentimental on me? He asked, his voice slightly rougher than intended. I am getting ready for a fight, Kalen replied, and something in his smile made Finnick very glad he was not Dravos Kale. The challenge came at midnight, as the equinox moon reached its zenith. The pack had gathered in the arena, a circular space of packed earth surrounded by stone walls, ancient and scarred from centuries of combat. Torches burned along the walls, casting a flickering orange glow. The air was electric with tension. Word of a possible challenge had been circulating all day, and the pack had come prepared for spectacle. Dravos Kale strode into the arena in full battle armor, leather and mail, weapons gleaming, his scarred face hard with purpose. He had not yet spoken, but his presence was a declaration. Warriors who supported him, perhaps 200 in the arena, seated together in a block, rose to their feet when he entered. The sound of their fists striking their chests was a drumbeat of dissent. Kalen entered from the opposite gate. He wore no armor. He was dressed simply. Dark trousers, dark tunic, boots, no weapons. In the challenge arena, the Alpha had the right to choose the form of combat, and Kalen had chosen the most ancient and most brutal, wolf form. No weapons, no armor, no mercy, just the wolf. Marin was in the royal gallery above the arena, flanked by Thessa and Novia, surrounded by 6 of Finnick's best warriors. Through the bond, she could feel Kalen's emotions with crystalline clarity, controlled aggression, sharp focus, and beneath it all, a calm certainty that she had come to recognize as the feeling of a man who has found his purpose and is prepared to defend it. She was terrified. Through the bond, he felt it, and he sent her a pulse of warmth. I am here. I am strong. I will come back to you. Dravos spoke first, his voice carrying across the arena. I, Dravos Kale, warrior captain of Greyhaven, invoke the right of challenge. I challenge Alpha Kalen Thorburn for leadership of this pack. The grounds, incompetence, corruption, and the betrayal of our traditions through the elevation of an Omega to the Queen's seat. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some angry, some supportive, most simply tense. Kalen stepped forward. I accept the challenge, he said simply. Wolf form, to submission or death, as tradition demands. The 2 men faced each other across the arena. Elder Gregor, who had presided over the Moonfire Festival and was now presiding over this very different ceremony, raised his hand. The challenge is accepted. Let the moon witness. Begin. Both men shifted. Dravos's wolf was large, brown and gray, battle-scarred, powerful. He was a veteran fighter, and his wolf reflected it. Thick neck, heavy shoulders, teeth yellowed from years of combat. He was fast and brutal and experienced. Kalen's wolf was something else entirely. The alpha wolf was black as a void, silver-tipped and massive, a head taller than Dravos's wolf, with a chest like a barrel and jaws that could crush bone. His eyes blazed gold in the torchlight, and when he growled, the sound was not a sound at all, but a vibration that traveled through the earth and made every wolf in the arena press their belly to the ground. Alpha, apex, unchallenged. The fight was not long. Dravos attacked first, a lunging strike aimed at the throat, fast and vicious. Kalen dodged with a fluidity that belied his size, spinning left and his jaws closed on Dravos's shoulder. The impact drove the challenger sideways and blood sprayed across the arena floor. Dravos snarled and twisted free, raking his claws across Kalen's flank, drawing 3 lines of red through the dark fur. The crowd gasped. They circled. Dravos was bleeding but not done. He was a warrior, and warriors did not yield at first blood. He feinted right, then drove left, going for the belly, a killing strike if it landed. Kalen read the feint, dropped his weight, and met the charge head-on. The collision was thunderous. 2 enormous wolves locked together, teeth flashing, claws tearing, the arena filling with the sounds of primal combat. But Kalen was stronger. He was the alpha, the apex predator, the wolf that the moon had chosen to lead. And more than that, he was fighting not for pride, not for ambition, not for the cold satisfaction of power, but for his mate, for his pack, for the future that Marin had begun to build. That purpose burned in him like a star, and it made him unstoppable. He caught Dravos's throat, not a killing bite, a controlling one. His massive jaws closed around the challenger's neck with exactly enough pressure to make the message unmistakable. Submit or die. Dravos struggled, thrashing, snarling, his claws scrabbling against the earth, but Kalen held him. The Alpha's gold eyes stared down into the challenger's blue ones, and the dominance was absolute. Through the pack bond, every wolf in the arena felt it, the hierarchy reasserting itself. The challenge answered, the Alpha confirmed. Dravos went limp. He rolled onto his back and exposed his belly, the universal gesture of submission. It was over. Kalen released him and stepped back. He stood over the defeated challenger, blood on his muzzle, his chest heaving, and he lifted his head to the moon and howled. The sound tore through the night, wild, magnificent, triumphant, and the pack answered. Every wolf, every voice, joining the howl until the mountains themselves seemed to ring with it. Even the warriors who had supported Dravos bowed their heads and acknowledged the truth that the fight had made undeniable. Kalen Thorburn was Alpha, today, tomorrow, and for as long as the moon saw fit to grant. Kalen shifted back to human form, breathing hard, blood from the claw wounds trickling down his side. He turned to the crowd, and his voice rang out clear and strong. Dravos Kale is defeated. His challenge has failed. Under pack law, his fate is mine to decide. He paused. He looked up at the gallery where Marin stood, her hands gripping the railing, her amber eyes bright with tears and relief and pride. Through the bond, she sent him everything she felt, and he received it like sunlight. Then he turned to the arena floor, where Dravos lay in human form, bruised and bleeding and defeated, and he said something that no one expected. I will not kill you. Shock. Whispers. The pack exchanged glances. I will not kill you, Kalen repeated, because killing a defeated challenger is the old way, and we are building something new. But you conspired with a banished traitor. You smuggled mercenaries into my fortress. You plan to execute my queen. His voice hardened to steel. For this, you are banished. You and every warrior who aided your conspiracy. You will leave Greyhaven territory by dawn and never return. If you are found within our borders after sunrise, the mercy I show tonight will not be repeated. Dravos stared up at his Alpha with something in his eyes that was not hatred. It was confusion. Confusion and perhaps the first flickering awareness that the man standing over him was not weak for showing mercy. He was showing strength of a kind that Dravos had never encountered and did not know how to fight. Two warriors hauled Dravos to his feet and escorted him from the arena. In the gallery above, Marin let out a breath she had been holding for what felt like her entire life. Thessa was crying. Novia was nodding slowly, with the quiet satisfaction of a woman who had lived long enough to see history bend. After the equinox, Greyhaven changed. Not overnight. Change never comes overnight except in stories. And this was real life, messy and complicated and full of people who were not characters in a tale but human beings with their own fears and biases and capacity for growth. But it changed. The Omega reforms took root. Schools opened in the lower quarters of the territory, and Omega children who had never held a book sat in classrooms alongside the children of warriors and nobles and learned to read and write and calculate. An Omega healer was appointed to the Pack Council, a woman named Sorsha Vane, who had been running an underground clinic for Omegas for 20 years and who accepted the council seat with the calm efficiency of someone who had been doing the work already and was simply getting the title to match. Marin herself grew into the role of queen with a grace that surprised even those who wanted to believe in her. She learned politics not as a game of power, but as a tool for service. And she wielded it with the same precision she applied to her healing work. She established trade agreements with neighboring packs that included Omega protection clauses. She created a system of community healers stationed throughout the territory, ensuring that no village was more than a day's ride from medical care. She sat with Kalen in every council meeting, and when she spoke, people listened. Not because she was the Alpha's mate, but because what she said was worth hearing. The bond between them deepened in ways that neither had expected. The forced transparency of the fated bond, which had initially been uncomfortable, became a foundation of radical trust. They could not lie to each other, could not hide, could not pretend. And in that nakedness, they found something rare. A partnership built not on the performance of perfection, but on the honest, daily work of loving someone as they actually were. Kalen was not perfect. He was stubborn and sometimes overbearing and had a temper that flared like a forest fire when his patience was tested. Maren was not perfect either. She could be too cautious, too willing to compromise, too inclined to put others' needs before her own in ways that Kaelin, feeling her exhaustion through the bond, had to learn to challenge gently. They argued. They disagreed. They had conversations at 2 a.m. that were raw and difficult and left them both wrung out. And then they woke up and faced the world together because that was what the bond meant. Not the absence of conflict, but the commitment to walk through it side by side. The pack watched this unfold with the particular fascination of a community witnessing the birth of a new era. Old attitudes died slowly. There were still those who muttered about the Omega Queen, who questioned the reforms, who longed for the rigid hierarchies of the past. But with each passing month, as the territory grew stronger and more prosperous, as the Omega schools produced their first scholars and the community healers saved their first lives, the resistance softened. It did not disappear. It simply became harder to sustain in the face of undeniable evidence that the new way was working. On the anniversary of the Moonfire Festival, 1 full year after the rejection and the poison and the bond that rose from the ashes of both, Kaelin and Maren stood on the same dais where everything had begun. The courtyard was full again, torches burning. The pack gathered beneath a sky that blazed with stars. But this time, there was no elder with a moonstone cup, no ritual of choosing. There was only the Alpha and his queen standing together, and the words they spoke to each other were not prescribed by tradition, but came from the honest, imperfect, unbreakable truth of what they had built. 1 year ago, Kaelin said to the pack, I stood here and made the worst decision of my life. I rejected my fated mate because I was afraid, and a woman nearly died for my cowardice. I do not say this to ask for sympathy or to perform contrition. I say it because a leader who cannot acknowledge his failures is a leader who will repeat them. I was wrong, and the woman beside me, the woman who survived my cruelty and her enemy's poison and the entire weight of a system designed to keep her down, she taught me what strength actually looks like. It does not look like a king on a throne. It looks like an Omega in a blue dress, standing up after the world has knocked her down, and choosing to make that world better instead of burning it to the ground. He turned to Maren. I chose you too late, but I will choose you every day for the rest of my life, and I will spend every one of those days trying to be worthy of the choice you made when you said yes. Maren looked up at him, at this man who was king and wolf and flawed and brave in hers, and through the bond, she sent him everything, every feeling, every memory, the pain of the rejection and the terror of the poison and the warmth of his arms and the steadiness of his love and the fierce blazing pride of standing here, in this place, changed and whole and alive. I was told all my life that I was the least, she said to the pack, the lowest, the weakest. I was told that my place was at the edge, in the shadows, in the back of the room, and I believed it. I believed it until a man broke my heart in front of 1,000 people, and I discovered that the heart, once broken, can be rebuilt stronger than it was before. I believed it until I drank poison and survived, until I was claimed by an alpha who got on his knees to earn my forgiveness, until I stood in your council hall and spoke and you listened. She paused. Her voice was clear, carrying across the silent courtyard, reaching every ear and every heart. I am not the least. None of us are. Not the Omegas, not the servants, not the children born without titles or wealth. We are the roots of this tree, and without us, the crown falls. She reached out and took Kaelin's hand. He took it. They stood together on the dais, Alpha and Omega, king and queen, the wolf and the healer, bound by a fated bond that had been broken and restored and forged into something unbreakable by the fire they had walked through to reach this moment. The pack howled, not just the wolves, the humans too, voices rising into the night, filling the sky above Greyhaven with a sound that was joy and acknowledgement, and the beginning of something that would echo for generations. And in the back of the courtyard, in the shadows near a stone pillar, an old woman with white hair and amber eyes stood watching her granddaughter on the dais. Novia Ashford did not howl. She did not cheer. She simply smiled, a small, private, infinite smile, and she thought of Maren's mother, her own lost daughter, and she whispered to the stars, "Do you see her? Do you see what she has become?" The stars, as always, said nothing, but they burned very bright. Above Greyhaven, the moon was full, and somewhere in the mountains, A black wolf with silver-tipped fur and gold eyes stood on a ridge and sang to it, a song without words, a song of gratitude and love and the wild, untamable truth that some bonds, once forged, can never be broken. Not by rejection, not by poison, not by fear or politics, or the cruelty of those who cannot bear to see others rise. Some bonds are written in the blood and the bone and the light of the moon itself, and they endure. They endure. The end.